welcome into Anita on the Mark. We've been covering the Diddy trial since it began, myself and of course Nevin Shapiro. Nevin, pretty much the prosecution has laid out their case. Closing arguments ended for them on Thursday. The defense, their closing arguments, we're taping this on Friday, ended today. The jury now gets to spend the weekend marinating in everything that's happened, and then they come back Monday morning at 9 a.m. to start deliberating whether or not that P. Diddy is guilty or not. Your thoughts on the past few weeks, and here we are.
It's insanity. It's been the longest 30 days of this guy's life, and it's about to be the longest and shortest in the same statement. And it's all or nothing. This is it. This is big dice. All the chips are pushed to the middle of the table, Anita.
I can't even imagine.
Big pressure. It's real.
What this weekend for him is going to feel like. That's for sure. Let's bring in our very special guest. He was on with us, I want to believe, our second episode, and it was so phenomenal. We wanted to bring him back. Mark Eiglarsh, who's joining us, professor at University of Miami, graduated from University of Florida, law degree from Loyola, prosecutor and a defense attorney, has done it all, and is one of the best. You see him all over the media, especially talking about this trial. So Mark, so great to have you back. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, first things first, there's so much I want to dive into and discuss with you, but I think I want to go back prior to Thursday when the government sent a letter to the judge talking about language, right? Where let's remove attempted as opposed to attempted kidnapping. We're still going to go with kidnapping, but we're going to remove the attempted. Let's remove the aiding and abetting, but we're still going to go with the sex trafficking. When that letter came out, a lot of shows like ours went online and said, well, they're removing the kidnapping, they're removing the sex trafficking, but that's not really the case. This was all about language. So if you can kind of explain to us what that letter was about and how important that is now when the jury starts really deliberating on this case.
Yeah, it's extraordinary how many people made much ado about what is absolutely nothing because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Let's say you were charged with attempting to do a podcast and doing a podcast. Getting rid of attempting wouldn't have any real impact because they can prove that you did the podcast. Except what it does do, if you leave the attempted in there, is add several more pages in an already thick jury instruction packet that bores the hell out of these jurors. All they did was streamline the charges. They've got kidnapping is what they're suggesting. They've got sex trafficking. You don't need the aiding and abetting. You don't need the attempted. That's it.
It was, but when that letter came out, it was breaking news. It was breaking news all over the place. It was nuts. All right, let's
an attorney. Everybody becomes an attorney. It's the best. It's like you watch Grey's Anatomy. Now all of a sudden you feel like you can go do heart surgery.
Right.
Perfect.
All right, well let's talk about Thursday and the prosecution. Their closing arguments. Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic opened up with, quote unquote, and I'm going to be a little dramatic here, he's the leader of a criminal enterprise. He doesn't take no for an answer. It's his kingdom, and everybody was there to serve him. Obviously, what they're trying to prove, and we've been talking about this for weeks, is racketeering, aka RICO. And that's a number of crimes under that umbrella that many people feel the prosecution did a great job proving. Many people feel that they did not, from drug trafficking, arson, forced labor, witness tampering, kidnapping, the list goes, bribery, the list goes on and on. First things first, explain to our viewers out there and our listeners out there in regard to racketeering that the prosecution just has to prove two crimes under that umbrella for a jury to come back and say, yes, that's racketeering. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes, but there needs to be more, right? Is this a criminal enterprise? That's the first thing. couple of random knuckleheads doing some things randomly without some type of an agreement, not under the umbrella of a criminal enterprise led by Diddy, you don't have RICO, right? I mean, they're taking a charge that's reserved for Al Capone, right, who used murder and kidnapping and horrible things to a guy who's really into lube and Astroglide, applauding them for their efforts, right? How do they do that? They did a great job in saying, I know this charge doesn't typically apply, but let me take you through it. And if you're intellectually honest and you follow the dots, you can get there. So did they prove this is a criminal enterprise, all there to serve his flawed needs? Well, an argument absolutely could be made. And then they went through each of the 11 charges that will be on the verdict form, where jurors are going to go down one by one. Did they prove this? Did they prove that? Then they must find that he committed 2 out of the 11 requisite acts. The jurors don't even have to agree on which ones he committed, just 2. And I think, again, no one knows what this jury is going to do, but everybody did their role. The prosecutors did a great job in closing this thing down and telling the jurors, here's why it's racketeering. Here's why it's sex trafficking. And here's why he caused prostitutes to cross state lines and paid them for sex.
So your evaluation in regard to following this case and what they laid out and how they brought it all together in the closing arguments, what grade would you give the prosecution, Mark?
I'd say a solid B+, and that's primarily because I don't give anybody an A. They did it. They did the best that they could with a case that started off with, they're doing what? RICO for this? Another person? And again, I'm not fond of this whole strategy. I've had numerous clients over the past decades that they're bringing RICO charges on, making them out to be racketeers when it just doesn't apply. And in this case, they found a way to make an effective argument. Now, I'm not saying the jurors are going to buy it. That's a whole nother argument. But they laid it out so that if jurors want to hold this man accountable to the utmost, and boy, they might want to, because the government did an amazing job beyond all doubt, proving that he's an abhorrent human being, and he's abusive, and he's nasty, and he's committed acts of violence and ruined people's lives. They can get to the point where they find him guilty as charged.
I agree. Can I interject real quick? I have a huge question, Mark, that's really been like, Anita and I have spoken about this a couple of times. Why, this is certainly not your first rodeo. You are a veteran of this game. Why is this jury not sequestered? Why is it not sequestered?
Yeah. I mean, because it's in the judge's discretion, right? Not all juries have to be sequestered. And I don't know, first and foremost, whether the defense even made that motion. I had a big high-profile case not too long ago. I didn't move to sequester the jury. That's the first thing. Did they ask? And I don't know if they did. And the second thing is, typically most jurors are not sequestered. They follow the judge's orders that begin each day. Judge, anybody see anything about the news on the news? Anybody watching? No? Okay. And usually jurors are able to block out things and make a decision based upon the facts and law. But listen, to your point, I agree that you're raising the point in good faith and for good reason. In an ideal world, you have people live in a bubble for 6 weeks. That's the best way to do it. But that's also really, really challenging and expensive too.
Yeah. There's just no way that they're not watching what's going on. There's just no way. It doesn't make them dishonest. It's just, they're humans. Right?
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
The closing statement for the prosecution in their final closing argument. Up until today, the defendant was able to get away with these crimes because of his money, his power, his influence. That stops now. It's time to hold him accountable. It'll be interesting to see if this jury does. For the defense, their closing arguments began today, which, by the way, both went a little over 4 hours. Is that normal? Is that the case, Mark?
Every
4 hours
case is different. Every case is different. When I represented Scott Peterson, the alleged coward of Broward, who didn't kill Nicholas Cruz and was facing a life sentence, I pleaded for no time restriction. The judge wouldn't go along with that. And then he asked the state, how much time you need? They said 2 hours. I'll give you 2 hours. I said, wait, Judge. If you're really setting a time limit, just give me 3 hours. He said, no, I'll give you 2. He wouldn't give me 20 more minutes to finish my closing. And to this day, I still have tremendous resentments, and I guess I'm airing them publicly. It's random, and I'm glad that the judge gave them a lot of time because it's a very complex case with a lot of crimes to discuss. And so, no, it's not uncommon. I would have expected them to talk for that long.
Are you surprised the defense called no witnesses at all?
No. In fact, I rarely call witnesses. A couple reasons. Number one, even though the judge says the defense has no burden of proof, the minute you start calling witnesses, jurors are going, okay, we saw 34 witnesses over there, and that took this amount of time. And the defense, they only called like 2 or 3 witnesses. Well, the government's obviously better. You want to avoid that. Secondly, if you're really doing this right, you tell jurors up front, we may not call any witnesses if they fail to prove their case. In fact, the defendant who's dying to testify may take my advice and not take the witness stand. How would that make you feel? And you find those jurors who can swear and look you in the eyes and look credible and believable when they say, it's okay. I'm not going to hold you to any burden because you don't have to prove anything. The next thing I ask you is, who are they going to call? You call Diddy? Forget about it. He'll be eviscerated. That guy's ego is not his amigo. He would get slaughtered up there for days having to justify his abhorrent behavior. Forget about him. You're going to find a psychologist to say that women who stay in relationships, abusive relationships, want to be there as opposed to what the government put on. Good luck. That witness will probably have a red nose, big red shoes, and shoot water out of their flower on their lapel. So who are you calling? Who are you calling? Who you got that's worth shifting the burden over? I don't see anybody.
Well, Nevin and I were talking about it today. Nevin felt like, well, who's gonna testify for him? Who's gonna take his side?
Who would stand up?
And any minor advancement you get is outweighed by the reasons I gave you. That it looks like you're taking on a burden and they're going to compare and contrast. No, you say we chose not to call any witnesses because they didn't prove their case. This isn't a racketeering case. This isn't a sex trafficking case. It's absurd.
Less is more. Yeah.
So the defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh delivered the closing arguments, and just really quick, just going through like the quick highlights of what they brought to the table. Right, Combs employees were loyal to him. They didn't always like him, but they loved him, and they didn't want to leave him. They did admit that, hey, listen, we are totally guilty of domestic violence. We're not. Obviously we saw it on camera, on film, time and time again.
I'm only smiling. What a concession they made. Really?
Exactly.
They started this case, the government did, with that video. What a great concession you guys made. Go on.
This was interesting. He said Cassie is not a victim because she already won a $20 million civil lawsuit. And, oh, by the way, is expected another $10 million settlement from the Hotel Intercontinental in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Like, she still, even though the fact that she was awarded that money means that she's a victim. Doesn't mean that she's not a victim.
Okay, you want the counter argument? Because
I do want the counter argument.
I want to interrupt you. Were you done laying out the defense argument? Because I could poke
holes.
No.
I mean, there's more. They're claiming that the kidnapping wasn't.
I'll go through it. I'll cover it for you. Okay,
sure.
Here you go. Okay. So first they're saying at the top, this is ridiculous. It's not a RICO case. He's not like at the top of a criminal organization. He's a music guy who likes lubrication, right? This is ridiculous, all right? Secondly, they didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt any of the requisite acts that are required for RICO. And he went through one by one by one. I won't go through all 11, but here's a little taste. Kidnapping, not kidnapping. Cassie Ventura wanted to be there. Look at her text. Look at her saying, I can't wait for the next freak off. Yeah, there were times that she was unhappy, this and that, but that's part of a loving, beautiful relationship. And again, don't kill the messenger. This is me making the defense argument now, as I just zealously made the prosecution argument. How about the kidnapping of Clark, the woman who was in a room for hours, given lie detector tests over and over and threatened that if she didn't pass, they'd throw her into the East River. The argument is, it wasn't kidnapping. She was uncomfortable. She was made to feel unsettled, but that's not kidnapping. arson, burning Kid Cudi's car. Where's the evidence there? They never brought state charges. Why, when they looked for fingerprints, were none found? And third, the only DNA evidence was that of a woman. They didn't prove that count. The list goes on and on, how they went through each one. So if jurors want to acquit him, they can look and say, you know what? It just wasn't proven. He's an abhorrent man, but they didn't prove the charges.
Mark, one of the things that I was thinking about, obviously we're watching everyone's version, like you discussed and mentioned when you first got on. And all you have to go on is just whatever your hearsay is from the pundits, right? The one thing I think, I've always had a problem, and I hate the feds in general, period, right? For my obvious personal reasons. But, I've thought this has been a weak RICO case from the jump. The thing I really think that they may just get him, and I'm asking for your opinion, you do this every day for a living. Is that video so hard to unwatch and unsee, and he's so despicable that they say, you know what, maybe it's not a RICO, but he's just a despicable human being, and he's guilty in my eyes, even though he may not be of RICO?
Okay, so the video is compelling. That's why the government led with it. At a minimum, it made the witnesses who then talked about being victims of his brutality a lot more credible, because you can see what he's capable of doing. That ties into the sex trafficking. That ties into what he's capable of doing. And that, most importantly, admitted character evidence, along with all the other bad stuff that they showed, that made him look like a horrible human being. So that now right away puts the jurors in a position where we don't want to help this guy. We don't like him. So now everything, like you're a sports fan, whether it's a charge or a foul, so much depends upon what team you're rooting for, right? Mm-hmm. Two people can watch the exact same action over and over again and say, can't you see it? It's obvious it was a charge. No, it was a foul. Blocked him. No. Same
pass
thing
interference, with no pass interference.
Right? Absolutely. I can't right, stand Anita? LeBron James. When he flops, I'm like, stop it.
Right. So if you can't stand Diddy, which side are you going to be, more tethered to? And that doesn't mean that it relieves the government of the burden, but it makes it a lot easier. Because if you make a mistake and maybe you're not sure, a lot of them will err on that side. So listen, the video doesn't prove racketeering. It doesn't. It shows domestic violence. They still have to prove the elements, but oh boy, did it help. Without that video, I don't know that they really have a chance.
Hence why he paid $100,000 to get it from the hotel. Oh, and by the way, that wasn't bribery. Real quick,
hold on. The argument is he didn't pay when there was a pending criminal investigation. In fact, Cassie didn't want to have anything to do with the police. He didn't pay it was just a hotel employee. So the argument is it doesn't even meet the definition, the defense argued, of bribery, because you weren't bribing due to a criminal case that was pending. Government makes a different argument. Okay, go.
The government rebuttal. Do you feel that they were able to repair whatever damage the defense did in their closing arguments?
Not if they're in camp defense. In other words, they're already in a camp. Why didn't she leave? We don't believe it. These gals got plenty for their relationship. And okay, there are many of the freak offs that they enjoyed. How do we know which ones they didn't? Really? That's what the government's telling us? So the government getting up in rebuttal and emphasizing, how dare the defense do what they did? They try to attack our victims, and they try to explain his lies by attacking the government. Yeah, I mean, does that change their minds? I think their minds are made up before rebuttal.
All right. So the judge told the jury that he's going to give them instructions on Monday. They're back in court at 9 a.m. To begin deliberating. So now I have so many questions in regard to, I'm curious. So what is that like? So they walk in, the judge explains to them, and then what? They all go in a room. Who decides who's forming? Is it?
Boring. It is the reason why you've never seen jurors read the law in any drama, in any television or movie, is because it's the most boring thing in the world. The judge reads a thick packet And maybe after the first paragraph, they can hang in there. But after that, they're drifting. They're thinking about what they're having for lunch. They're not listening. It's impossible. I've tried to listen. I've tried to pay attention. I can't do it. And there's so many charges. So then to answer your question, they're bored out of their minds. They finally go into the room and they can do something that they haven't been able to do for 6 weeks that they're so eager to do. Talk about the facts.
Talk about the case.
They've been talking about everything but the one thing that they share in common that they really want to talk about. They go back there, they elect a 4-person who presides over their discussions like a chairperson.
So how do they select that person, Mark? How does that person get selected?
Personal. Someone could say, I want to be it. And they go, okay, you could be it. They could draw straws. They could say, that I don't even know. It's up to them. They decide who wants to be the leader, right? The grand poobah of the discussions, right? And then how they conduct their deliberations is totally up to them. Jurors do it differently. I'm going to tell you this one story, okay? I don't have much faith, and I say this with love, of the average juror's intelligence, and here's why. My first federal trial ever, we all gathered with anticipation, a major trial, because the jurors had a note, and everybody comes running. It's a big deal to get everybody together. And the note read, I shit you not, what dose, D-O-S-E, because they couldn't spell does, D-O-S-E, this is the leader of the jurors. What dose unamos mean? They couldn't spell unanimous. They couldn't spell does. They didn't know what unanimous meant, even though the judge just read it in the damn jury instructions. This is an actual federal case in Miami. So I tell you, people predicting what these jurors are going to do, they don't have a clue.
Okay. Based on your experience, how long do you believe, from what I understand, they want this to be over before 4th of July, which is Friday. Do you think it goes till Thursday? Do you think it's...
Yeah, I think it'll go. Listen, first, I'm not even sure that it'll end 4th of July. That's up to the jurors. They could take 2 weeks on this. That's number one. Number two, they're all going to be rushing because of 4th of July, but they'll not rush it because, like every high-profile jury, right, in a high-profile case, they don't want to look like they rushed to judgment, right? So at a minimum, there'll be one person, if not all of them, who says, even though we're unanimous at this point, let's take our time and go through everything, right? So I don't expect it fair. I don't think it's going to be a quick verdict at all.
If it was a quick verdict, so what are you looking for as a defense attorney? Are you looking for a quick? What is the difference between it taking more time or taking less time? Who's got the advantage, and what do you prefer to see in your position?
Look, keep them out as long as they're out. Look, I try to get a quick verdict in my cases, depending on what kind of case it is. A quick DUI, a little battery, aggravated battery. She's lying. They didn't prove the case. Done. But this, for them to go through each and every charge, each and every crime, they can't physically do it without going through it for at least days. If they're really being honest about it and they're doing their job, it's going to take them a lot of time. I don't know that they're going to get it done by Friday. Maybe, but it'll be a verdict on Thursday or Friday then.
Is it the fact that this ended today on Friday and now these jurors have to go home and marinate in this through the weekend? I'm someone who's I would have wanted the closing arguments and the jury, the instructions to happen on Monday and we get in there. Is this a good thing or a bad thing that they get to kind of marinate in this over the weekend by themselves, allegedly?
They've been marinating in this for 6 weeks. Every time another compelling witness gets up there, they want to talk about it. And to Nevin's point, many of them may have. Honey, no one's going to know what happens in the bedroom. Can we talk about this? I got to talk about this with somebody, right? I guarantee you that goes on, right? That said, as long as they're true to their oath and they go through and they carefully decide whether it's been proven or not, then okay, you can't prove that they're talking about it anyway.
Okay, a few more really important questions. I'm sorry, Nevin.
I'm sorry. What I wanted to ask Mark, so based on what you've seen, I know you haven't watched the case. We haven't watched it, right? It's not publicly viewed. It's federal situation. So based on what you've taken from the pundits and the playbacks.
I don't listen to them.
Yeah.
I
on the
know.
description of the
Opinions are like, you know what? They don't know. They know
yeah.
better than
What
anybody. They know better than you. I don't think so.
can you tell? You said you gave the prosecution a B plus based on what you've interpreted. What how do you think the defense matched up against their B plus?
Solid B plus two. They both did an effective job.
Hallward,
Is it a
right?
charge?
Hallward,
Is it a foul? It just,
right?
here's what we don't have. Here's what we don't have. This is the key for me. We don't have our finger on the pulse of how Cassie Ventura and the other victims' testimony, how that resonated, how it was, because we weren't in the courtroom. Some say it was compelling at times. Some say, oh my gosh, not so much. And then the most important thing is what's in the mind of each of the 12 when it comes to someone not leaving a relationship when they're allegedly sex trafficked, when when coercion is present to get them to do things that they don't want to do. What do they think about that? And some people are very elevated in their thought. They say, no, I understand the complexities of the trauma bond. I understand Dawn Hughes's testimony. That was a psychologist that the government called. That was very compelling, who explained why Cassie might stay instead of going, that these manipulative abusers could keep them in relationships. Knowing the outcome of this case means you know what each of those 12 thinks about
Right.
that specific subject matter. And
Such
no one knows.
That's a great answer. And let me say something, Anita. So, the real reason you had me on when we decided to start this process was because how do I match up with Mark Eiglarsh in a legal setting? I don't. He does this for a living. He's effective. He's efficient. He's a killer at what he does. But I've also been where he hasn't been, inside, dealing with that stuff. And I've seen things, and he's 1,000% right. What he just said. The whole world it's a big world out there, and everyone has an opinion, except the only ones that matter are 12 people that you cannot read what's going through their mind. And I've been through this situation, and I know exactly the unknown is just the unknown. There's no way you can read all these people's mind. You don't know.
That's why I always laugh when these lawyers pound their chest, these defense lawyers. We're going to go to trial. We're going to beat you. We're going to school you. Really? I go to trial because I have to, not because I want to. Because ultimately, no matter how good you are, you can't control what 6 or 12 jurors are thinking. You cannot. You can only control yourself, and it's still a gamble. And every lawyer has lost some that they thought for sure they were going to win. So that's the gamble.
So, Mark, really quick, before we let you go, a few questions here. If he is found guilty, what happens next? When does the sentencing come down? Is it same day? And if he is found guilty, do you believe that he'll get life if he's found guilty of racketeering?
All right, so let's go with the first part. Nevin knows this from his experience. You then go through, there'll be a report, a pre-sentence investigation report, trying to figure out where he falls within the guidelines, what people are recommending. There'll be a whole preparation for sentencing, and both sides will get the opportunity to address the judge and try to plead their case.
It's called PSR, Anita, just so you know, PSR. Pre-sentence report, investigation. And that's like a 4 to 6 week process, closer to 6. And that doesn't just happen because they got to give you the benefit. Well, it doesn't work in your favor. Let's just say.
And the judge decides the sentencing, correct?
That is correct. Correct. And so now you're asking me, what do I know about this judge and how he feels about Diddy and or how he feels about these particular crimes? And it is absolutely pure speculation. I can give the same answer, say, yeah, I think the judge is going to give X, Y, and Z, like a lot of the talking heads do. And you know what? I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. I don't know what this judge is going to do. I think he's going to hit him hard. I think he deserves to be hit hard. I think he should hit him as hard as he hit Cassie in that video. Wow. I just said that.
Yeah. Anita, let me just say.
But you know what, Mark? A lot of people feel the same way you do. So I'm glad you said it.
To Mark's point, to answer your question now, on top of what Mark just said, I pled for 10 years. We had an agreement, a binding contract, except it wasn't a binding contract because the judge gave me a 2.5 level upward departure and sent me to the moon. 20 years instead of the 10 I agreed to. That being said, it null and voided the contract that I had, which then gave me my rights back to my appeal, which I waived. But they violated the contract. Mark knows what I mean.
Yeah, but I'm thinking in my head, do I call him out on it? What the hell? I'll call him out on it. You knew that contract was not binding on the judge. It was merely an agreement between you and the prosecutors. And the
Yeah,
prosecutors was only going to tell the judge they're recommending 10 years. The judge was free to do whatever he wants. Quit crying, you bitch.
I should have had 11. I should have done the 11
Oh
C
my
1 C. I need to do 11 C 1
Sorry.
C. It's all right.
You
Boy, I got thick skin, Anita. Listen, I should have taken the 11 C 1 C. That would have been the end of it. It would have been an agreed upon thing. The judge would have stamped it. All right. That was my comeback.
Back to Diddy, because I've got a lot of questions here. So if he's found guilty and he does go to jail, do you feel that, is he going to go like a Martha Stewart jail? Is he going to go into, general population? Is he going to be on suicide watch? Like, what if he does go to jail? Where are you thinking he goes?
Yeah, I don't know, and Nevin may be able to answer better than I. I'm not an expert in where they're going to. It's up to the Bureau of Prisons. And I shook my head no, because if he's convicted of, let's say, racketeering and he's given real time, as opposed to just being convicted on the transportation of the prostitutes over state lines, and then maybe his guidelines are much lower, the judge gives him a couple of years, that might be Martha Stewart-esque, camp-esque. But if he's getting hit with racketeering, he's going to get some decades in prison, which means he'll go to likely a medium to maximum security. And they'll probably, again, I don't know if they'll segregate him at first. I don't know. Nevin might know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, let me pick that up, Anita. So if he gets convicted, first of all, he's not going Martha Stewart. He's not going to a camp. Let's just start.
Correct.
In, right? He's not going to a camp. Okay, just based on him smacking Cassie around, will keep him from going. I'm just telling. He's not going to a camp. That's not going to happen. If he were to end up in a medium, like I shared on our last episode, he will end up at a place. And I happen to know the BOP landscape. Unfortunately, I've toured that whole situation all over. The place for him, the best place, suitable place for him with the time he would get if convicted, is where R. Kelly is, which is at Butner, the medium one, which is where Madoff is. And that's because there's a lot of high profile guys there, and there's a decent livable situation for a guy of Diddy's world and popularity and resources and whatnot. And he can live a very comfortable life within the prison system. That's where he would end up. Forget Martha Stewart camps. That's not how he's not going to be. He's not going to be in a camp. That will
Mark,
not.
I know we've kept you for way too long, and we so appreciate your time. Two quick more questions. Number one is, if he is found guilty, we can all expect an appeal, right?
Yes.
And what is that process like, and how long would that take?
Well, it could take years. He'll do time before both sides submit their briefs. And it's for his lawyer, probably not these lawyers who argued the trial case, but a specialist in appeals, to comb through the trial transcript and pre-court rulings and all the rulings and try to find error in what the judge did, that he didn't get a fair trial.
And that would be Alexandra Shapiro, Anita, who is no relation, but considered a very powerful appellate attorney and great at her craft.
And last but not least, and this is something I've got to give Nevin credit for this, because he's been talking about this from day one, and that is, if Diddy is found guilty, does the federal government go after the co-conspirators, and specifically Christina Kurum, who was Diddy's CEO. There was also D-Rock and two others. She was mentioned quite frequently in their closing arguments. Do you feel that that's an avenue that the government will travel down if he's found guilty, Mark?
One has nothing to do with the other. His culpability, whether he's found guilty or not, wouldn't then have an impact on whether they go after. The government's not saying, well, we'll go after these other people only if we see what a jury does and if they find them guilty. They've either chosen not to go after these people for whatever reason, using prosecutorial discretion. Maybe they don't have enough evidence. Maybe they've cooperated behind the scenes. I don't know. Or they are investigating them and they'll bring their case at some point. My guess is you're not going to see prosecutions on anybody else.
Interesting. Nevin, any final thoughts before we sign off?
I happen to think, contrary to what Mark says, I think Christina Koran is going to get hammered if Diddy gets convicted. Hammered. She didn't want to play ball with these people. When you don't play their rules, they come for you. I think they're not certain of the position they have because they're not certain of the verdict that they're about to witness.
And you think that the verdict determines whether they go after this person or not? Yes?
Yeah, I do. I do in this situation. Yeah, I think
Maybe
she's.
right. I don't know.
I think she's Ghislaine. She's not the. I think she's Ghislaine Maxwell in this scenario, and I just know when you don't play ball with these guys, what they do.
Okay.
Mark, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Obviously, have a lot to say. Still got a lot of gas in the tank, and now I've emptied it, and I feel good. And I'm grateful to you guys. It's being a Friday. I've done a lot of appearances this week, and my tank is now empty. And I say thanks to you. Let me go enjoy the weekend with my wife and get on the pickleball court. Thank you so much.
So, Nevin, I mean, listen, true crime is not my wheelhouse, right? True crime is not my wheelhouse.
It is now.
Well, but this process, agreeing to do this with you,
yeah,
and you know, it's been a ride. I will say this, you know, true crime is not my wheelhouse. It's not where I swim, but I agreed to do this with you, and here we are, and we're 8 weeks in. I have to say, I feel so much more intelligent and so much more knowledgeable about our legal system, about the federal government, about racketeering, about all of it, because I've been doing this show with you, and we've been able to book these phenomenal guests like Mark, like Kathy, like so many others that we've had. I mean, I've enjoyed doing this, and I feel so much more knowledgeable. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to me.
Thought in the late '80s when we were at the University of South Florida playing flag football and going to Cooper Hall that we'd be teaching law class.
Right here, baby. Right there.
I had to
go long.
I had to go to prison for 10 years to come do a podcast with you about the law. It's crazy.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Hey, listen, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. As always, please subscribe, comment. So much information to dive into and really digest with Mark. How brilliant. Now, hopefully, you know, you're more educated. I know I'm more educated. I'm sure Nevin is as well. We've got the weekend ourselves to marinate in this. Monday, they get back in court. The jury will start deliberating. Mark feels that it's going to take a while. Maybe we won't have a decision until Thursday. I know they want to try to end this before 4th of July, which is Friday. We'll see if that does happen. But know one thing for sure, as soon as the jury makes a decision, guilty, not guilty, Nevin and I will be back here with you for possibly maybe our final podcast on the Diddy trial. But we've got more podcasts coming your way as well.
You went from parlays and special bets to indictments and acquittals. It's crazy.
That could be like the name of a book I write. One of many, Nevin. One of many.
Unbelievable.
Nevin, yeah. I appreciate you. Have a great weekend, my friend. And
right,
and I'll talk to you next week. Again, everybody, please subscribe, comment. We look at your comments. We respond to your comments. And just know how much we appreciate all the viewers that have been watching us religiously. And we really appreciate it. You guys have a great weekend as well. We'll see you next week.